Do you want to play rough? Okay. No. Say hello to my little friend! Okay. You want to play rough? Okay.
It's the 1980s. Would you like some cocaine in a cigar with that? Sure, man. Scarface, The World Is Yours is one of the more interesting PS2 games I've played in a long time. It stands out not just because it's based on such an iconic film, but because of how well it captures the raw grittiness of the 1980s. We all know the 80s is a very well-liked era that holds dearly to a lot of people, even folks from my generation. And it's strange how an era that's this loved was also plagued with so many severe issues that sparked a bunch of movies, shows, and video games to capture it. When I played Vice City, I stated how I thought it was an incredibly flawed game that captured and depicted the corruption of Miami in the 80s beautifully. It had an amazing atmosphere that I still think is the best in the Grand Theft Auto series, has awesome references to what was going on during that time, and features an awesome soundtrack that amplified the experience even more. Of course, with Scarface, The World Is Yours being an open world game and having remnants from Grand Theft Auto, the game has been marked as your typical GTA knockoff or GTA clone. However, this game is an interesting one. It's not like the other quote-unquote Grand Theft Auto spin-offs that do a few things differently to differentiate themselves. Scarface is pretty much in a league of its own. It features a plethora of unique mechanics that fleshes out the world a whole lot more than Vice City ever did. I've always loved 1980s crime media. I think it's one of the most interesting topics, along with the Wild West of course, and I figured, well, summer's approaching and there's no better game to talk about right now than Scarface. You're probably also wondering why I'm not just emulating this game. Well, that's because I want to play these games in their true original form so I can accurately judge the game. I want to experience them as authentic as possible. So don't tell me I can just play the original version on PC with better graphics and performance, because son, that is not the original version, you These two games are incredibly similar, and I thought it would be cool to take a deep dive and see whether or not Scarface is really better than Vice City. And spoiler, I am going to be spoiling the entire movie as well, so if you haven't watched it yet, then I'm gonna be spoiling the entire story.
I told you a long time ago, you fucking little monkey, not to fuck me!
Hey, who the fuck do you think you're talking to, huh? You wanna fuck?
Now, to start off, I want to start off with the open world of Scarface, because it is a vast improvement of Vice City. I've said this a lot of times in the past, despite Vice City nailing down the atmosphere, I've personally never been a huge fan of how the map is laid out. More specifically, I've never been a fan of how Vice City itself is tiny, and then Vice City Beach is like 1/3 of the entire map. I've always felt it to be absurdly massive for its own gain, and when you go there, it literally offers nothing to do in it. Like, it plays zero role in the entire story, which I know beaches are a really big factor in Miami, but the way it's included in the game makes it a very useless waste of space. In Scarface, however, the map has a ton of more variety, which, by the way, this isn't me saying that Vice City is a terrible map, but you have 4 different towns. You have Little Havana, Downtown, South Beach, and North Beach. All of these areas, especially North and South Beach, look fantastic with all of its neon colors that pops even more when it's nighttime. And what do you know? You also have access to the Cuban islands that you can explore. I mean, does it get any better than that? And it should be pretty obvious that Scarface's map is much bigger than Vice City. And I'm not even saying that it's like, you know, oh, it feels bigger than it really is, but it's still kind of small. Like, it is a pretty humongous map for a PS2 game. But most importantly, Radical Entertainment found a way to make the map huge, but not prioritizing quantity over quality. A lot of games tend to do this sometimes. When I played True Crime Streets of LA a few months ago, that game's version of Los Angeles is massive, and it's probably the biggest open world on the PS2 that I've ever seen, but it falls into the pit of feeling extremely bland and lacking any kind of personality to it. Like they always say, less is always better. Driving around Miami is amazing in this game. Every location is different and unique. There's always an incentive to explore different places, as there's pretty much always something to do, like whether that be you going around each individual city and taking down different gangs, or going around and selling drugs, or just doing some of the side missions. This game is packed and loaded with content, which I began to reflect on my performance in FPS, as my PS2 sounded like it was going to literally explode, but Anyways, of course we'll talk about each individual mechanics like the drug empire building system on its own, but in terms of open world exploration, some of the cities will be locked until you have owned the previous one. Like for example, you can't start building your empire in North Beach until you have 100% owned South Beach, so on and so on. I know Vice City kinda did this, where Starfish Island was locked away from the player for a good chunk of the game, but I prefer how they went about it in Scarface. And now the overall biggest difference that this game does that completely separates it from the other open world crime games is how you go about in the game, if that makes any sense. Unlike Grand Theft Auto, where you're given the ability to go around and murder everyone in cold blood, in Scarface you won't be able to just shoot innocent civilians, as the game will stop you from doing that. And if you try to do it, Tony will say to himself how what he is doing is wrong and immoral, and way against his code.
No fucking way, man. That's against my code. I ain't no fucking worm. They don't deserve it, man. Fuck that.
This shouldn't be a surprise because if you watch the movie, you will know that Tony's code was that he never killed women or children, as that was shown in like one of the last few scenes of the movie.
Now you feel good, huh? Now you feel good to kill a mother and a kiss, huh? Now you feel big. Like you big man. Well, fuck you.
But at the same time, I think it's kind of funny how like you have this raging drug lord that will literally kill people who deserve it in cold blood. But this little feature does provide a much different way in how some people may look at this game. Because while it is still about a game causing havoc, the game at the same time prevents the player from causing chaos in the open world. Well, I guess if you just run them over with a car, though there's not any type of benefit from doing that. And while we're on the topic of cars, vehicles in this game are some of the best I've played on the PlayStation 2. While they may feel a little jank, they feel miles better than any Grand Theft Auto game from the 3D universe. GTA 3 to San Andreas, never again. Cars in this game have great traction to the ground and feel more realistic in a sense, rather than feeling like straight toys that have zero weight to them. In GTA 3 and San Andreas, the slightest bump on the ground could either send your car flying or make it spin out of control, which was mildly infuriating. Scarface has the right balance between GTA 4's driving and the arcadey style that makes them feel brilliant, especially the handbrake mechanic that allows you to hit some pretty nasty drifts around the corner. And while we're on the topic of vehicles, I guess I'll just make this a segue into the exotics. No, not exotic dancing, but the exotic mechanic that you can unlock once Tony opens his brand new bank account in the beginning of the game. This is one of the key mechanics in the game that you'll be finding yourself using a ton. With the exotics tab, you can find yourself purchasing a boatload of things, ranging from all of the unique collectibles, which is a first for me. Usually when I play games, I have to go out and search for collectibles in the open world, but you can buy collectibles like Manny's ashes, which you'll know from the movie is Tony's crime partner that he killed, Gina's ashes, Tony's sister, and more expensive stuff. You can also buy the plethora of cars available to you, ranging from convertibles, Lamborghinis, this weird looking car, and more powerful armored vehicles. And I've gotta say, the vehicles in this game look fantastic. They all look and sound different, providing a much needed variation. And I like when you're going through all of them trying to find which one to buy, the game lists the stats of the cars for you, so that you know if it's a piece of crap that isn't worth buying. But you'll see later throughout the game that you will have to eventually buy all of them whether you like it or not. And I will say that is one critique I have for this exotic, because there are so many cars in this game, and while some of them do look interesting, you're realistically only going to be using like 2 at most. For example, if I buy the Rattler, which is the fastest car, which you can unlock fairly early on in the game, why on earth would I ever use the other 97% of vehicles? Like the game has this slow ass limo, like when would I ever use this? They just become absolute filler that takes up space in the game, but I digress. You're probably also wondering how you actually get your vehicles. Well, unlike the GTA series where it makes use of garages, Scarface doesn't use garages to store your cars. Instead, you're gonna have to make use of the Henchmen exotic. Henchmen are essentially employees of your drug empire that work for you and help you along the way. You can buy certain henchmen. Kinda sounds weird, like yeah, you can buy humans like this is the black market. But you can purchase different henchmen, like in this case the driver costing $15,000. All you have to do is select the driver tab, choose which car you want, Tony will call up his henchman to request his car, and seconds later, your henchman will come to wherever location that you're at and deliver it to you. And even better, you don't have to physically go to the mechanic shop to get your car repaired, despite that feature being available to you, but instead you can just repair your car through your phone. It's so convenient and saves so much time. Only thing is, and I think you guys know what I'm gonna say, and this isn't even a bad thing about the game, it's just something that I kind of just noticed about it because I'm kind of crazy, but there wasn't any customization ability for the cars. Like you can't change the color of your car or change how fast you want it to be, but I feel like if they added this in the game, then my game would run 10 times worse than it already was. Other henchmen you can buy is the boat pilot, which allows you to call your boat wherever you are near water, and some people may find this not very important because they're going to mainly be driving in Miami, but when you progress into the story more, you're going to be finding yourself in water more, and sometimes during missions when you're in water, the game will occasionally bug out and you'll be stranded in the middle of the ocean. That literally happened to me one time, and I hadn't bought the boat pilot exotic yet, so I virtually had nowhere to go, and it's not like you can swim very far in this game. Well, I mean, you can swim, unlike Tommy Vercetti. Not trying to throw strays, but when you're in the ocean, you can get eaten by sharks randomly, so I was forced to just restart my game. The arms dealer enables you to purchase different weapons directly over your phone. Probably should have mentioned this, but yes, this game doesn't have any type of gun stores, but instead people illegally selling guns on the streets. When you buy them, they will automatically get stored in your gun locker. Here you can buy ammo clips, different upgrades, while also being able to access your weaponry through the trunk of your car, which I think is a really neat inclusion. This makes it to where you won't be able to have all of your guns at once, as you'll only be able to carry a few at a time, making it a little bit more realistic. The Enforcer and Assassin are henchmen that you can play as, where you can do a series of jobs for Tony. The Enforcer comes with the grenade launcher that you can shoot, and the Assassin is pretty self-explanatory. You play as a female, going around Miami and assassinating targets, and you'll notice that when you do these jobs, you will earn money that goes to Tony. Like for example, one of the Enforcer jobs paid like $50k and that went directly to Tony. It would have been even better if you could instruct your henchmen to do these jobs for you, so that way you can make money passively, but it is what it is. Some more exotics to note are your mansion upgrades, which are really fun to mess around with. You can either keep your mansion as the original look, change it to a more modern look, and an eclectic look. This only goes for the inside, as the exterior remains the same. Inside, you can add furniture and decoration from the exotics tab to pimp your mansion out, and it's not just like little stuff. You can buy a ton of stuff. The last one is investments, which are the most expensive exotic for obvious reasons. Montana Records unlocks new music tracks and even creates a whole playlist for you, which we will talk about the music, don't you worry. Montana Holdings that will cheapen the businesses for you by 10% when buying them. Montana Financial lets you deposit your money in the bank with a 0% interest rate, which is so damn helpful because there's nothing more frustrating in this game than trying to deposit your money in the bank and the bank takes like half of your money. Now the most expensive one and arguably the most powerful one is Montana Defense, which gives you maximum ammunition costing $60 million. Oof, that's a lot of money. Now overall, the exotics are an amazing inclusion to the game because it not only affects your gameplay, but it gives you a lot of things to actually spend your money on. I've played so many games where I stack and stack on money to the point where I have so much money but literally nothing to spend it on. Here you can buy cars, boats, furniture, collectibles, decoration, investments, and more. But even though the exotics are a super important feature to the game, the most important mechanic that pretty much defines the entire game is the drug empire system. Now, Vice City didn't really have a way of selling and distributing drugs. However, Vice City Stories featured its own empire system. The empire system in Scarface isn't exactly like Vice City Stories, where in that game you can earn passive income by doing nothing. In Scarface, it boils down to going to a storefront, doing a job for the owner of the place, which in most cases it's defending it from rival gangs, and then selling the cocaine to that place. You'll know when a property is available to you when you see an X marker, and when you complete the job for the owner, it then turns into an M, which lets you know that you can now purchase it. And sometimes, many times in fact, you won't have enough money to buy these businesses, as some of them could get pretty damn expensive, going upwards to like $13 million. So to actually get cocaine to make money, there will be a series of Felix jobs that you can do, which is a character in the game that provides Tony additional work. You can either do Felix leads or Sandman leads, depending if you're on the Cuban Islands, and for the most part, they're pretty much all the exact same. Not gonna lie, they get kind of boring after a while because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over, but once you complete at least one of them, you'll be able to go out and buy drugs, which has you meeting someone at a designated spot, and you can buy upwards to 10 kilograms of coke, which is a lot. And what I love about these drug deals is just like real life, you can randomly get ripped off by someone, which forces you to go to a different location to buy it from someone else. And you might have already seen, to exchange in the drug deal, you have to hold O on your controller and release it at the right time. And if you fail this, the deal goes wrong, and the person will begin trying to attack you, forcing asking you to restart. And this is honestly the most annoying part about the drug dealing mechanic. Like, I overall like this feature. It makes it more engaging for the player than just pressing a button, but man, it could really trip you up when you're trying to just do a simple thing. There's so many times where I go to meet the person and they're selling a lot of coke, and when I do it, I fail it, and it's like, damn it, now I gotta restart. And if this is on the Caribbean islands, if you restart, the next mission will then start on the other island, so I gotta drive my boat over there, and when I get there, I mess it up again. And if you fail too many times, the game punishes you by having the enemies on the island rob your money, and when you respawn, they just kill you instantly. And at that point, I just restart my PS2. But if all goes well and you have your coke, you then go around and sell it to all of your storefronts. Now, there's a couple different ways you can sell your coke. You can either just go directly to your storefronts and sell all of your grams to the owner, which is the safest way. Early on in the game, you'll mainly just be going around to the different dealers around the city and selling it the traditional way, you know, just doing drug deals in broad daylight, which isn't a whole lot and takes the most time to do, as you're only going to be making around $6,000 to $10,000 from a single deal, which from the outside may seem like a lot of money, but later in the game when you actually own a storehouse, you can do distribution missions, which is when you really start raking in some serious money. You're essentially selling all of your drugs in bulk. To do this, you go to Tony's warehouse, pick the kind of vehicle you want. It's best to use the fastest car for obvious reasons, and begin the mission. You just go around and collect all of the products from your storehouses, which you can earn anywhere from $300,000 from a single delivery to millions. They become an absolute money printer later in the game when you own the Sandman plantation, as I started making well over $10 million. Now, the payout varies depending on how many storefronts you own in the game. Like, if you own every single storefront in Miami, then you're gonna be ballin'. It's gonna take much longer because you're gonna have to be driving all around the city, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. Early on in the game, when you're still building your empire, you can expect to make around $1.5 to $2 million if all goes smoothly. I say smoothly because a lot of stuff can go wrong, like rival gangs chasing you down, and your businesses getting raided in the middle of a distribution mission. I know, it sucks ass. It's so annoying how it only happens during distribution missions. Now, just like Vice City stories, these happen completely randomly and are a pain in the ass to deal with. Like, if you're all the way in South Beach and one of your storefronts is under attack all the way in downtown, that's a long way to drive, and you're probably not gonna make it in time. All you have to do to stop it is just go in, kill the gang members, repair it, and continue the mission. And if you're really unlucky, you can get another raid right after that. My strategy whenever these happen was to just let them happen and repair it later after the mission, because although I was missing out on a lot of money, there's just too many risks with trying to stop it in the middle of a mission. I would always get one shot by one of them carrying a chainsaw, and I would lose everything, which is just awful. Or most times the cops would swarm the area, and it would make trying to finish the mission a nightmare. They're not as bad as Vice City stories in terms of how consistent they happen, because dude, I couldn't go like 10 minutes without getting a notification that one of my empire businesses was under attack. So to counter this, you can buy upgrades to your businesses like surveillance cameras and henchmen to protect it. The raids won't happen as frequently, but they can still happen, and when they do happen, it buys you a lot of time to actually get there before it's completely destroyed. Heavily recommend it, even though the henchmen are probably some of the worst bodyguards known to mankind. Cops are also a fucking nuisance in this game. My god, they are everywhere. It's unbelievably difficult to lose them. Like, if you attract too many cops, because unlike GTA, there's not a wanted level with stars, but instead a white meter around the minimap, if you do too much, you're gonna get a message on your screen saying you're fucked, which means you have no chance of escaping the police, and you're basically already dead, you just don't know it. And I do not like this feature with a passion, because if you die, you lose everything. You lose all of your drugs, and if you haven't deposited your money at the bank, which if you're still trying to sell coke then you haven't yet, you're gonna lose all of that, and it's so infuriating. Or worst of all, you can be in the middle of a drug deal mission pushing millions and get the message saying, hey man, fuck you, and there's nothing else to say besides it's just awful. It sucks even more because the cops only try to kill you. It doesn't matter if you're trying to protect yourself from other gangs. If you start shooting back, the cops are gonna come after you, which I assume is by design because Tony Montana is, you know, a massive drug lord in Miami, so for that the cops really do not like this guy. I will tell you about the distribution missions. I do quite enjoy the ones where you fly out to the islands and then smuggle them back into Miami while trying to avoid the coastal guards. They're intense to say the least, and while these do take quite a while to do, it's absolutely worth it for how much money you can make. And this makes it to where the game has a really nice progression system, as in the beginning of the game you have literally nothing. You have to resort to selling small grams of drugs to dealers around the city and killing other gangs for their money until you to eventually start smuggling large quantities of drugs from the Cuban islands. I should also mention your reputation is also equally as important, as the more you increase it, it allows you to run larger deals for more profit, which the main way you increase your level is by either purchasing exotics, buying new storefronts, or completing main missions and side missions. Even better, you can convince different women around Miami to come to your mansion, which will increase your rep as well, which is, nice feature to the game.
Well, it's obvious you got a fucking attitude on you, baby.
I move in higher classes.
Hey, there is no higher class than me, baby, okay? You got
I
that?
have an appointment already.
Now, at the end of the game, when you successfully kill Sosa, you get rewarded with your own plantation and can have 30 keys sent to your warehouse, which you can expect to earn tens of millions of dollars, and it won't be long until you make over like 60 mil. I'd say overall, the business empire isn't as simplistic as Vice City Stories is, where in that game it's pretty straightforward: kill enemies, reclaim the property as your own, pick the kind of business you want to transform it into, and just let the money roll in. In Scarface, there's a lot more stuff to it that you have to know, and you can't just simply sit back and relax, but it's a hell of a lot more fleshed out. It feels way more powerful, claiming all of the different turfs from all of the different gangs, having your henchmen work for you as your employees to help you grow your empire. It's awesome. And of course, we can't talk about an 80s based video game without mentioning music, and Jesus Christ is there a lot of music. If you already bought the Montana record exotic, then you'll be offered more radio stations. The game compresses 8 different stations featuring a wide variety of genres like hip-hop, Latin, country, 80s pop, reggae, rock, which they included rock and roll. And unlike Vice City that didn't allow you to change specific songs, only the radio stations, you're able to now shift through all of the different musics in Scarface. And I'll be honest, while I generally like the selection of songs that Scarface has, as it still has a lot of memorable songs that capture that era, and also featuring the original tracks from the movie itself, which I do like, Scarface on its own has a fantastic soundtrack. But for the game, I still think Vice City is the king when it comes to having an awesome soundtrack. And that's not just me saying because of my love for Vice City. Originally, before I played Vice City, I had heard that the soundtrack was unparalleled to any game's music and was the greatest of all time. And I didn't know whether to believe that. I just assumed that it was just people's unhealthy obsession with the 80s, but I was so wrong. It features so many well-known artists like Ozzy Osbourne, Love Fist, Toto, Kate Bush, Tears for Fears, Michael Jackson, Slayer, Iron Maiden, Rick James, Twisted Sister, Laura Branigan, Run DMC, Bryan Adams, favorite artist from the 80s hands down. Just an unbelievably good soundtrack with so much variety. I do think it is cool how in Scarface you can play the music wherever you are, not just when you're in your car. Like if you're in the middle of a mission, you can play whatever song you want, which is really cool because for the most part it's always going to be quiet during missions. But other than those cool little features, I still have to say that Vice City compresses the most tight bunch of songs. Some people might disagree with me, which is fine. Again, they're not bad, and if I hadn't played Vice City, then I probably would have said that Scarface has the best soundtrack from the 80s. I also do want to touch on the general gameplay, like the mission design, shooting, and combat of this game, because Jesus, this game could either be an awesome experience or an absolute pain in the ass. Starting off, I've never been a fan of protection missions, and this game has almost too many of them. I've never understood in games when you're trying to protect someone, they constantly move away, making them more vulnerable to get shot at. So many of these missions would be so easy if they just didn't include this. And this goes for even some of the side missions like the Felix leads. It got to the point where anytime I got a protection mission, I would just cancel it. But strangely enough, this game honestly isn't really that hard compared to the 3D Grand Theft Auto games. There are obviously a few challenging bits, like when the game throws a horde of enemies at you all at once and you virtually have nowhere to take cover. But after playing actual hard games that push you to your literal breaking point, I breezed through this game, which thank God. I typically am able to appreciate like harder and difficult games, as I'm not particularly used to them given the era that I grew up in where games nowadays are objectively easier to complete. But sometimes I feel like when games are almost too difficult in a way, sometimes I feel like they can be a turnoff for some people. I wouldn't say me specifically because I can, generally push through hard things. Vice City has so many difficult missions like the RC helicopter mission due to the crappy controls. Honestly, that mission really isn't that hard, it's just the controls for the most part. That one mission where Tommy Vercetti has to kill the Cubans with the sniper rifle, and my god, let's just not repeat that again. I found Bombs Away really hard due to, again, the clunky flying controls, and if we want to take it a step further, Vice City Stories has some downright insane missions that felt like they were straight up not play tested. So it was nice for this change where I could actually relax and enjoy the game. This game also offers cheats, because what kind of game would this be if it didn't have cheats? It has the normal type of stuff like refilling Tony's health, repairing his vehicle, lowering your heat from rival gangs and cops, and you can change his outfits to either his classic all-white Italian fit, his Hawaiian shirt, his blue shirt, black suit, and several others. You'll have to buy the Montana Productions exotic to be able to change his clothes, costing a little over $1 million. And I'll say this just now, I did use cheats here and there. I mainly only used it when I had to smuggle cocaine from the Cuban islands back to Miami, as it was almost impossible to do when enemies would shoot at me from their boats, as if the boat explodes then you have to restart the mission, and I'm not trying to redo that again. Like, I mean, come on, I just want to get my drugs back to my storehouse. And I know that this is a PS2 game, but I'm just gonna say this, the movements of this game suck ass. I don't particularly mean the mechanics, like, you know, they're fine, but the game has that classic little input delay before Tony can move, and this heavily affects my gameplay when I'm trying to kill enemies. Sometimes when I'm going against an enemy, I find myself too close to them, so when I'm shifting through my weapons and the enemy hits me, I have to wait for Tony to finish his animation after he gets hit, which gives the enemy enough time to hit me again and gives the other enemies around us to shoot at me. Great. However, the shooting in combat is great and way better than GTA in every way. When you're shooting, the game has an auto lock on aim, and it works better this way because although it locks onto enemies, it locks onto their entire body, which allows you to freely move your crossfire aim wherever you want, while still being locked onto the enemy, which can result in some pretty gruesome kills. If you headshot people with a shotgun, you can blow their entire head off. Whereas in the GTA trilogy, at least in GTA 3, you were stuck with that godforsaken lock-on aim, where you didn't have that much control over it, and it just looked awful. And my favorite part about this auto lock-on aim in Scarface is that when it locks onto an enemy, it doesn't just immediately lock onto a different person without you manually doing it. So that way it avoids any problems like shooting things or people that you didn't intend to shoot, which if that was how it worked, it probably wouldn't have been a super big deal, considering that Tony can't shoot innocent civilians, but it is a helpful feature. And when you hit certain body parts like either headshots or like, you know, leg shots, then you will earn balls. Yes, balls are an energy meter that Tony earns. Once you fill it up all the way, you can activate a rage mode, where you switch to first person and are invincible for a short period of time, where you can go around and maul enemies down as the game auto locks onto them, with it also giving you infinite ammo and restoring your health fully, which I think this feature perfectly fits within Tony's personality, a raging drug lord murdering anything in his vicinity. Even drive-by shootings in this game feel more like actual drive-by shootings. You can freely aim out the car, and you can lock onto the entire car, as opposed to the camera being stuck in only one position, and you only being able to shoot in one direction. I also briefly mentioned the different gangs that you can encounter in this game. All throughout Miami, you can kill different gangs, and by killing their leader, the leader will drop money. It varies from like $50K all the way to like $1 million, making it a pretty nice like way to make money off to the side if you don't want to keep doing distribution missions. Just be prepared to die a lot, because this game throws so many enemies at you when you're trying to kill these gangs. And on top of that, when the cops show up, that's just when things become an absolute hellhole. There aren't any rival gangs on the Caribbean islands, but apart from the drug cartels that swarm the area and attack you anytime you're there, which I understand that there's a reason why they're there, but it makes exploring these islands very annoying because you literally can't drive on your road for like 10 seconds without getting shot at. Now let's talk about this game's story. It's interesting to say the least how this game goes about its storytelling. To start, the game is about Tony Montana trying to rebuild his drug empire after it's destroyed by Sosa's men. Yes, this game isn't really an adaptation, but instead a direct sequel to the movie, where in the game he doesn't actually die, with the main plot centering around if he didn't get killed at the end of the movie, which is shown by the opening scene of the game where Radical Entertainment actually uses all of the audio from the final battle of the movie, which gives it a really authentic feel.
Say hello to my little friend!
You horse! You think you can take me? Give me a fucking army, you're gonna take me! You hear? I take you out to fucking hell!
Unlike Grand Theft Auto, where there are a series of missions that are available to you and you can do them whenever you want, in Scarface you have to level up your reputation and you have to own the turf that you're in to continue on with the story. And I'd say that's probably the biggest problem that I have with this game, because by having to own a turf, you're gonna have to own all of the businesses there, and they can be pretty expensive. Some of the ones in North Beach going up to $11 million, 13 mil if you don't have the Montana financial exotic. And if you're still not at that point where you're not making tens of millions of dollars, you may not be able to afford them, preventing you from continuing on with the story, which unfortunately can make the game a very grindy and repetitive, because you're gonna be forced to keep doing distribution missions over and over and over until you make enough money to buy the businesses. And these missions all follow the same formula: do a Felix lead, fly to the islands, get the drugs, drive back to Miami, rinse and repeat. And when you buy the businesses, it's like you never had the money in the first place. It's kind of like Saints Row in its respect system, where you gotta grind and grind for respect bars by doing the side missions to actually do the main mission, which this just made my playthrough take much longer than I anticipated to, taking me almost like 3 weeks. Like, I like the idea of it, like having to own a certain part of the map before you can actually move on to the next part of the game, but I feel like to completely lock the player away from even moving on with the story is a bit too much. But despite that, for the most part, the entire bulk of the game is about you building your empire back to where it once was. There's huge portions of the game where that's all you're doing. Mainly when you have to buy exotics to increase your rep, you're gonna be doing drug work to make money, which can take quite a while to do. I genuinely thought that was the only thing I was gonna be doing in the game. It completely overshadows the entire story, which in most cases could be detrimental to the game. However, I'd say it's okay in this case. As for one, the story isn't like the most amazing thing in the world. It's pretty lacking, to be honest. There's a lot of characters that you meet in this game and just forget even existed because of how much drug work that you're doing, and because, at least in my opinion, I already know how the movie ends, and it was a very cool and satisfying ending, whereas now you have this alternate universe where Tony doesn't die and he's alive. It's not terrible, but it's just it ain't as good as the movie. To be honest, I spent so much time focusing on building my empire that I kind of just forgot what was even going on. It took me until I got to the mission where you have to protect Sandman's plantation from Sosa's men, where I was like, oh yeah, that's right, we're trying to kill Sosa, the guy that got us killed in the movie. And when we do eventually kill him at the end of the game, it doesn't quite feel as impactful as I think it was intended to, which I think is largely due to the fact that we don't see him throughout the entire game. The game only mentions him when he calls Tony after he raises his reputation each time, but for a pretty major villain that got him killed, it's kind of strange how he's absent throughout the entire duration of the game. I also think what contributes to the story feeling a little bit meh is Tony Montana himself. Shocker. Now, Tony in this game is not voiced by Al Pacino himself, as he was in his mid-60s in 2006. Instead, he is voiced by Andre Suglioso, who is said to have been selected by Al Pacino, and this is no shade to the voice actor, but the way he plays Tony is so weird and polarizing. He's a good voice actor, and even though that I can easily tell that this is not Al Pacino's voice, he does have a good impression of Tony Montana. However, the problem mainly lies in his dialogue.
I always wanted to own my own drive-in, you know? This is America. I can sit in my car and watch Bogart on the big screen. Look, I know how it works, Jerry. I'm going to fight you on this. Every deposit I make.
I don't know, it's strange. You guys might not be able to tell, but to me, it feels unnatural. It doesn't quite sound like how an actual human would talk, but someone who knows the general baseline of what Scarface is, and saw a few trailers of Tony acting insane, and not truly how he is throughout the entire movie. He's incredibly exaggerated, talking loudly for no reason. Like, why is Tony talking like a coach to my guy who is like 5 feet away from him? It doesn't even sound like how Tony would talk in the movie, like not the impression, but the tone of it. Like in the game, he only has one trait, and he's just angry, which is kind of how Tony is, but that's virtually all we see of him. There's never any moments like that one scene where him and Manny are talking normally. He's so one-liner and caricature that in a way kind of makes it hard for me to take him seriously when I can't believe a single word he's saying, which is the complete opposite of Tony Montana in the movie. In the movie, he's a raging drug lord with a complete unfiltered personality, super sarcastic, funny, and confident at the same time.
My partners and I are pissed off, Tony.
That's okay, no big deal. This all Alberto's, you know. We're doing next month.
I'd say overall, the story of Scarface is alright in its own. However, it is far, far from what makes this game incredible. Its fleshed out empire building system that gives the player freedom to build their way back up to the top is something that I haven't really seen been done a whole lot before. Of course, Rockstar does have this in Vice City Stories and Chinatown Wars, however, they're very surface level. And Vice City itself only features assets throughout the city that allows you to buy businesses and make money with them, which is cool, but no drug empire. This game, of course, gets labeled as one of those classic GTA ripoffs. However, I'm actually having a really hard time trying to understand that, because I could understand in games like Saints Row and True Crime LA, because while I wouldn't personally call them a GTA knockoff, they do resemble Grand Theft Auto a lot more. But Scarface is completely different in pretty much all aspects. I wouldn't even remotely consider this a Grand Theft Auto clone or a we have GTA at home. It of course is inspired by Grand Theft Auto, but it doesn't just reuse the same things. It takes aspects from GTA and makes them better. Would I say this game is better than Vice City? From a gameplay and open world perspective, hell yes, I would. There's so much content packed into this game. It's way more polished and has much better quality of life features, like having everything available to you through your phone, allowing you to buff your businesses out and repair them, request your cars, pay down your heat, buy weapons. It's so convenient. And while I still think the general gameplay loop can get very repetitive and monotonous, as it is like the exact same thing, this game has an awesome progression system that is very rewarding. Like after you grind for money and level up your reputation, you then unlock new things like more exotics, new properties, better weapons, and a higher profit rate, which I would say is worth the grind, especially how much money you can then make after you beat the game. I did also replay Vice City before playing Scarface just to refresh my mind a little bit, since it's been well over a year since I played Vice City, and it's interesting looking back at how much Vice City was inspired by Scarface the movie. From the characters, the mansion shootout, the story, and themes, it's so fascinating now having played and watched the movie now.
Look at that. A junkie. I got a fucking junkie for a wife.
With that being said, thank you all for watching to the end of this video. Sorry this one took a minute. I got so enthralled with Scarface that I kind of just put off from writing this video, so sorry about that. As of recording this video, we are really close to 4K subscribers. We probably already passed it by now, but thank you all so much for the support. It really does mean a lot that you guys actually like watching these videos and like hearing my opinion on these different games that, you know, were well before my time. I know I'm not the most consistent creator on YouTube, but now that summer's approaching, I'm gonna try and upload a little bit more frequently. So, I mean, who knows? I can just be gone for like 5 months and not upload a single video. But thanks again, and I will see you guys in my next video. See ya.